Assalamu alaikum. So we were studying the 24th word. We were reading the second branch of the 24th word, and we had talked about flower. I believe we finished flower. And we were going to move on to droplet.
Now, wise philosopher, so this is again page 354. Now, wise philosopher who has entered into droplet. You have advanced as far as the moon with the telescope of your droplet of thought and by the stairway of philosophy. You have entered the moon. Look of itself, the moon is dense and dark. It has neither light nor life. Your endeavor has all been in vain, and your knowledge has proved to be profitless. You can only be saved from the darkness of despair, the desolation of loneliness, the pestering of evil spirits, and the horrors of that bleakness through these conditions. You can only be saved from the darkness of despair, the desolation of loneliness, the pestering of evil spirits, and the horrors of that bleakness through these conditions. That you give up the night of nature and turn to the sun of reality. And you believe with complete certainty that the light of this night are the shadows of the lights of the daytime sun. After fulfilling these conditions, you will find your perfection. You will find the majestic sun in place of the poor and darksome moon. But like your previous friend, you will not be able to see the sun clearly. You will see it beyond the veils with which your reason and your philosophy are familiar and conversant. But like your previous friend, you will not be able to see the sun clearly. You will see it beyond the veils with which your reason and your philosophy are familiar and conversant. And behind the screen woven by science and learning, and within a color conferred by your capacity.
I guess you could read the next paragraph too.
Next paragraph as well?
Yeah.
We shouldn't stop to discuss.
I think we'll come back.
Okay.
Just see both of them.
And now our Adam-like third friend, who is both poor and colorless. He swiftly evaporates in the sun's heat, abandons his egotism, mounts the steam, and rises into the air. The dense matter within him takes fire with the flame of love and is transformed into light and radiance. He adheres to a ray proceeding from the manifestations of that light and draws close to it. O you who resembles Adam, since you act as a direct mirror to the sun, at whatever degree you are, you will find an opening, a window, looking purely at the sun itself in a fashion that affords absolute certainty. And you will experience no difficulty in attributing to the sun its wondrous works.
You continue.
Paragraph is complete.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Without hesitation, you will be able to ascribe to it the majestic attributes of which it is worthy. Without hesitation, you will be able to ascribe to the sun the majestic attributes of which it is worthy. Nothing will be able to take you by the hand and make you forego ascribing to it the awesome works of its essential sovereignty. Neither the constriction of barriers, nor the limitations of your capacity, nor the smallness of mirrors will confuse you, nor impel you contrary to the truth. Because since you look at it purely, sincerely, and directly, you have understood that what appears in the places of manifestation and is observed in the mirrors is not the sun, but the manifestations of it of a sort, and colored reflections of it of a sort. For sure, those reflections are its titles, but they do not display all the works of its splendor, the sun's splendor.
Thank you. Okay, so we can start with the droplet. And the droplet, again, to remind us, it says, then let this philosopher who has studied secular science and is plunging causes, like the old Sayyid, be droplet, which is enamored of the moon. So this is what the droplet is. So we'll start from the beginning. It says, now wise philosopher who has entered into droplet. You have advanced as far as the moon with the telescope of your droplet of thought, and by the stairway of philosophy. You have entered the moon. Look, of itself the moon is dense and dark. It has neither light nor light. Your endeavor has all been in vain, and your knowledge has proved to be profitless. You can only be saved from the darkness of despair, the desolation of loneliness, the pestering of evil spirits, and the horrors of that bleakness through these conditions. So I guess here, like, there's like a jump, not a jump, but he's saying that you have found the moon, and you look at this moon and you see that it's dense and dark, it has no light, and because it has no light, he says that your endeavor has been in vain, and like you haven't been able to benefit from this knowledge of being able to find the moon. And then he says that now you are in a state of despair. You're in a darkness of despair, you're in loneliness, and you're being pestered by evil spirits because you found the moon that was dark and that didn't have light. So it put you into such a state of loneliness and despair. It didn't help you. And you found the moon with your droplet of thought and stairway of philosophy. What were we saying about this? In the first or second week, we were talking about like the different groups, the droplet of thought and stairway of philosophy. This wasn't like the first group, which was all materialistic. This is the second group. This was the path of sainthood, I believe, right? The droplet was reflecting the path of sainthood.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. What? Yeah, I don't know. It looks like he's talking about philosophers. But in what sense this is talking about, or this is aligned with sainthood, I do not know. Because it looks like if we go with a one-to-one mapping, yeah, this looks like sainthood, but he's talking about philosophers.
Yeah.
So I guess initially he was comparing three different layers, classes. So maybe we should be comparing them relative to each other. Like if the third is prophethood, then the second one would be sainthood. But what aspect of sainthood is fitting into this category, I don't know.
Go ahead.
Maybe I can wait for other people to.
There's no other.
I mean, if I'm going to make a comment on this paragraph, I guess, just I'm not going to, not necessarily reading it within the framework of flower and droplet, just whatever the specific paragraph makes me think and feel. I guess if, it says philosopher, but it can be anyone who trusts upon certain arguments, certain ways of thinking to deliver them to the truth, certain tools or certain means to deliver them to the truth. If I trust upon those tools, if I trust upon, let's say, arguments, philosophical arguments, but again, I think this can take the form of anything else, then that's when it's the moment when I land on the moon and see that it's a rock, that it's dense and dark, that it's not the source of light, not the source of any of the qualities that I attributed to it. I think the despair of it, or the loneliness, or the desolation of it, comes from the fact that I had trusted it and given it qualities, expectations that it can't deliver. It's not necessarily the fact that there's no reality to it, because I see the moon, it is there. It is dense and dark. There is a reality to it, but it's just the fact that reality does not match what I attributed to it. And so, in that sense, I suppose, if I trust upon certain arguments, certain ways of thinking to be the absolute means to guide me, then it's only going to lead me to frustration. It's not that those arguments or that those ways of thinking won't have a glimpse of what is real or won't point to something that is true, but if I see them as the ends themselves, or then rather than being a tool, they become a crutch. something that hinders me. And I think it's interesting that even in later on in the paragraph, even when this wise philosopher, and I don't know why he says wise philosopher. Is he just being snarky, or is he just I mean, why the wise quality attribution there? But even when that philosopher, even when I'm able to find the sun, it's he says that you will not be able to see the sun clearly. You will see it beyond the veils with which your reason and your philosophy are familiar and conversant. And yeah, I don't know if it's possible to see something beyond the specific veils, beyond the specific filters, beyond the specific window through which one is accustomed to. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I just find it interesting that is it a negative thing that it'll be behind the screens woven by science and learning and within a color conferred by your capacity? Is it a certain limitation, or I guess compared to the other ones like the atom that doesn't have any sort of specific veil, might be. But I guess what I was saying is interesting is the fact that even when you find the sun, is it that this past experience will always be a sort of obstacle or limitation to what is possible for you?
Thank you. So what I got from what you're saying is, I guess when we're using philosopher, when he's using philosopher, it's, or what's sitting in my mind, and it said like the ones that study secular science and plunging causes, or droplet of thought or stairway of philosophy, like it. Maybe these are the people that, as you said, are like see these tools like knowledge or like studying or like trying to learn, look at the moon or look at the intermediary things and trying to find like the sun behind that, but they maybe made this knowledge or like this path, like they maybe attribute some of this to themselves, or like they say like this is how they can reach it. Because the third one is the atom, and the atom is poor, but then the second one, there's still like this effort to try to gain knowledge or try to be in a path of knowledge. So maybe this tool is acting as a sort of like a intermediary that's blocking them from truly understanding their poorness. That's an idea that he gave me. I'm not sure if that's what you're saying. But also last week we were talking about, and please anyone jump in whenever you want. Last week we were talking about how it seems to be like, I don't think he's saying something negative in the second one here, like wise philosopher, who's the droplet. Like I don't think he's calling the droplet like something that's bad. I mean, it's not the ideal thing, but we were like, it's not necessarily like a materialistic viewpoint. Like we were saying last week how the type of studying we do might be in this form. We might be looking at the moon. We might be like a droplet that's looking at the moon and we can't see the sun. Like we're always concluding about God's existence. We're always looking around and concluding that there must be one and looking at evidence. Which again, there was like a whole talk about this last week. I'm not saying this is in any way wrong. It's just there's this idea that maybe we need to also, instead of being stuck always on the intermediary things, somehow see past them and have like a direct conversation or a direct relationship with God. We were talking about how this requires being honest with yourself, like being very honest with honest with yourself and your emotions and your impotence and your neediness, like how you have no power to do anything. Like I guess introspection, it comes down to a lot of introspection and looking into yourself and your own emotions, like reasoning about your own emotions and like your own power, rather than doing more looking around you. It's more focused on introspection. Those are the things I remember from last week. Yes, Sahil, a little bit.
Sort of reiterating what everybody else said, but the interesting thing about his flower droplet atom comparison is that if you think about it, the distinction between flower, droplet, and atom is how much are you aware of the essence of a thing? So if you think about it, a a flower, you're sort of, I don't want to say, maybe distract is not the right word, but I'll use it. You're sort of enamored with its qualities in and of itself. So anything that you find beautiful or you behold to be beautiful, you kind of get lost in the qualities or what you consider its beautiful qualities itself. Beautiful, majestic, whatever word you want to use. Um, Droplet is trying to get closer to the essence. So when he says flower takes a part of the sun's image, or it sort of mixes, it appears to be mixing the sun's light within itself, it's because in the flower you sort of kind of get lost within its apparent reality. The droplet is a little bit more translucent and not as dense, and so you get somewhat closer to reality, but you don't quite see the essence of a thing as it really is. So still you believe, you may believe, but I think maybe it was Aisha Nur saying this, you like you it's as if you're sort of divorced from reality. Like I can believe, yeah, I believe in some sort of corner of my mind. Um, you know, I've come to some sort of conclusion, but you know what? In my day-to-day life, it doesn't really matter that much. Maybe I remember it occasionally here and there, but you know, it's a sort of reflection of reality. It's not reality in it. Like when I sort of converse with my day-to-day experiences, when I go through my life, no matter if I'm like, you know, happy, sad, angry, distressed, anxious, hopeful, um, I don't see sort of the all-encompassing light of the sun at that moment. I'm sort of preoccupied. And then there's like some reflection of belief there to maybe comfort me a little bit, I guess, you know, to sort of bring me out of that, especially when somebody's in despair. Whereas the atom, when you think about an atom, that's like a flower is made up of atoms, so is a droplet. But but the atom, like when you think of a flower, you don't really think of its atoms per se. But the atom is essentially what its building blocks. And so when you get to that sort of essential level, then you see what is real. Like the flower doesn't have a reality unto itself. You know, whatever I experience in life, it doesn't have in and of itself a reality unto itself. So for example, if I'm, you know, experience something and I'm, okay, I'll use a very stark example. I'm in the middle of a conflict. Okay, I'm in the middle. I mean, something like not for me personal, but having known people who personally have gone through it. Let's say I'm in the middle of like a Syrian civil war, the Syrian civil war. So like that's a real experience, and I'm distressed or anxious or fearing for my life. As an atom, you see sort of like the direct manifestation of God's will, His qualities right there and then in those sort of experiences. And like you are, as he says, directly looking at the sun. You see as he's creating from your perspective, and so you're comforted by that. I mean, that's like, you know, the highest level of um, belief or perfection of belief, whatever you want to call it, ihsan or iman, but or God consciousness. um, but you see for reality as it really is. Like you don't get stuck in the experience. Like you don't like it, but you're not stuck in the experience in and of itself. You see it as like a direct manifestation of the sun. Because you're an atom, you see nothing has an essential quality unto itself. These are just things under his will, his control, his all-knowing, all-powerful, all-willing creator. And that is the clearest and most apparent manifestation of belief. So that's kind of what I took away from that. That's why, I mean, the last thing I'll say, that's why if you're a flower, you have not forgotten the world, because you're still preoccupied with what is happening, not with what things mean, but what is happening. What's happening is just scenery. These are just sort of actors. And then he says, this philosopher who studied secular science plunged into causes, enamored of the moon. So he may be a little bit closer to what's happening, but he's still sort of stuck on the world, stuck on causality, stuck on what's actually happening to some extent. Maybe he thinks a little bit further and it's like, oh, okay, well, I have this world in front of me and I'm going to utilize it. And yeah, I guess it makes sense at some sort of, intellectual level that there must be a creator, and he has such and such qualities and he's doing such and such, but in my life, I'm concerned with causality. I'm concerned with actually what's happening out there. Whereas, as he says about the atom, poor man, because when you see the essential reality of something, you see nothing has any power. Everything is powerless. Everything is dependent. Everything is sort of impoverished. That's reality. And that's when you know things for what they really are, that they are all directly from Almighty God. And these things that you see, they're just veils to Him. So that's what I took away from this paragraph.
Thank you for that. That was a nice overview of everything. From what you said, the thoughts it brought for me is you were speaking about the philosopher or the droplet that you're saying, yeah, it seems that there must be a creator, but it seems like this is more like an intellectual curiosity rather than a need. This is just like, yeah, when I observe the universe, it seems like there must be a creator, and you come to such a conclusion. However, this doesn't reflect practically into your life, like at every moment. You're not living with that belief, because in some ways you still believe that causes have power and that things have value in and of themselves. But then whereas with the atom, because you are poor, you realize that continuously you are in need, in like intense need of the creator. It's not like it's not just a curiosity or like intellectual curiosity. It's a need, something that is practical for you and that you require at every moment to be able to see the sun, to feel the sun. You know that there is like no moon or no intermediary that can help you in any way. Yeah, thank you. I'll just still continue it where I left. Is that on your hand? No.
I've been thinking the question Ayşenur maybe truly but bluntly arrogantly asked, why wise? And also all this talk about the knowledge, or let's say everything, all efforts, prove to be profitless. So that's interesting. Like when he was talking about flower, he was not talking about any despair, any loneliness, anything negative. He was just saying that you have some limits. So that's all. But when it comes to this droplet, who is maybe more actively searching, trying to reach somewhere, now it talks about the despair, loneliness. What you do is profitless, it's just useless. And he says wise. Interesting. So I was thinking, like whatever we try to do, is we trying to do the wise thing, right? Like I'm trying to keep baby warm, which is a wise thing. I'm following a wisdom there. I'm trying to make my mother happy, my wife happy. my boss happy, whatever. They all wise things. They make sense when you think within the system, right? Nobody except maybe some exceptional people who we call irrational or mentally disordered, whatever. Most of the majority or most of the times of my life, I'm trying to do the wise thing. I'm trying to do the right thing. But the things that I spend my time, like all the things that I do at my workplace, let's say, that's the most of the things. If tomorrow somebody comes and tells me that, oh, your job is done here, now you have to serve chicken over rice somewhere. This is your new life. Nothing would be missing from my life. Like all the things I've done in the workplace, right? Of course, there will be a transition period, like I will feel sad and so on, but nothing will be missing in my life. Same thing for, I guess, everyone, like a lady living at home. We spend time to perfect our recipes. Like if I, make it with yeast, make it weight that much, it will become, how do you say, kabarmak? Okay, it gets bigger, softer, but you have to wait that much. You have to wait for 3 hours, not 4, not 2, 3. It will become perfect then. You have to use this kind of oil, not that kind of oil, and it will become better. If you put meat in it, So we're trying to make the wise thing. We're trying to make the right thing. But again, if I take this lady or the person from her life and say that, okay, this is not your life anymore. Now you are a lifeguard at this beach. Nothing will be missing in her. Right? He will or she will adapt his new life. Nothing will be missing.
When you say nothing will be missing, can you elaborate on that?
So let's assume somebody comes and tells you that from now on, we're not cooking any thing with flour, whatever. You will find another food and go with it.
Because flour has no meaning for you by itself. It's just whatever.
Yeah, whatever. You find yourself in a system and you try to do the right thing, wise thing. But what happens at the end? You prepare the perfect food. Your wife or your husband comes, eat a little bit, say thank you, and then go sleep. If you made it too much, it will go wasted. Because next day or third day, it won't taste the same. It will be just, source of despair for you. But you are trying to do the right thing. This is the wise thing to do. But at the end, it's profitless. You try to raise your children in the perfect way. What happens? They get older, they don't even listen to you. You become a burden for them. They feel, she's talking too much, he's talking too much. He's interfering with my life. This is the person who was trying to do the best thing, who was trying to do the right thing for you. And you, his child, do not even care about him or her. So whatever we do is trying to do the wise thing, right thing. But what happens at the end? Nothing left in our hands. Your children leaves you. Your food, they leave you even sooner. Everything you do to impress people, they just go wasted. But they are the right thing. They are the wise thing.
if you are stuck with these causes, within these causes, he says, what is it? Sorry. Let this philosopher who has studied secular sciences and plunged in causes read the droplet. So if you are plunged in the causes, if you are stuck in the causes, these are the things, best things that you can do, right? You cannot prepare the best pastry without putting the right amount of yeast. You cannot do that, that's true. You have to use the right kind of oil. But he says, the best pastry that you do, your moon, wherever you reach, it will be a lonely place. It will be a dark place. It won't give you a pleasure, it won't give you warmth that you are looking for. You're trying to raise your children the best way, which is the right thing. If you are plunged in the causes, but you know what, your children will leave you. Will not even care about you that much that you care about him or her. And it will hurt you. They will not ask your opinion, for instance, when they get married. They will not get your opinion when they try to raise their children. You become lonely. You sit there, watch them. If you are plunged in the causes, and if you are trying to do the right thing, this is where you will reach. A dark place, a lonely place. You will become the best scientist, you will become the best artist, you will become the best water researcher, you will become the best philosopher, but it will be a dark place. It will be a lonely place. But still, you're trying to do the right thing.
Thank you. I mean, what I understood from you said, or you don't have to believe that causes are truly like powerful by themselves. Like even if you had belief and you said, yeah, causes have no effect. But if your goal is to become the best teacher or to get this job, and you're like, yeah, causes don't have an effect, but there's an order to things, and I must live according to the order. And then you then live according to order, even though realizing that, again, causes have no effect. But you still try and live according to this order. And your goal is to become the best teacher, the best, to become like the best professor, to have the best job. The goal you have is still the moon, let's say. It's not looking further than that. So while you are wise and you are following the order correctly and you're trying to raise your kids the best way, it just stops. You're just, let me raise my kids the best way, but then why? Like what's further than that? Is it just going to stop at raising your kids the best way? Because then, like you said, you'll try to follow the order and raise your kids the best way, and then you're going to end up being extremely lonely and desolate by trying to be wise. It makes some sense to me. Yeah, I can agree.
Even if your end goal is not worldly, you're not just trying to make the best food, or you're not trying to just be the best professor. Even when you see that everything is coming from someone, there's a creator who creates things. And I'm trying to benefit from his bounties. Again, the wise thing to do. If you are given all these bounties, just try to benefit them. Why not? Not benefiting from them is being irrational, unwise. But when you plunge in the causes again, when you plunge or when you're stuck with these boundaries, that this is, how I live. Yes, there's a creator, he's sending me all these bounties, I'm enjoying them, I'm being thankful. But this is the life we live. There's nothing more. How can I be more religious? I'm praying Salah, I'm fasting, right? What else I can do? I have to go to work with car, so let me buy a reasonable car, not the old one, which is a wise thing to do. And my creator lets me to buy the best car. There is nothing wrong with it. There's no rule against it. It is wise thing. But when you say that this is my creator, the car, what I see there, the mercy I see there, it's my creator, that's it. He gives me car. He gives me children. He gives me food. And that's it. How more religious I can be.
So maybe plunging causes then is, I'm giving things, you see the bounty in the things that are given. You're even maybe thankful for the things that are given. You see that they're being created for you. But you're plunged in them because you don't move anywhere else. You're just stuck at that level of bounties. And maybe what those bounties are supposed to do for you is take you somewhere. It's supposed to like push you somewhere. Whereas you're just accepting them and seeing them as bounties and being thankful for them. But you're still plunged at that level, which leaves you lonely. We have a comment from H. Beza. Wise, in this context, then becomes utilizing the universe for itself in a way. I utilize to benefit me in the best way, but I restrict the extent to what best way means for me. I utilize to benefit me in the best way. I utilize the universe to benefit me in the best way, but I restrict to the extent to what best way means for me. The wisdom I seek is restricted, and I get caught up in the causes. Seeking wisdom itself is not unwise, but rather restricting myself of what wisdom means is unwise. Would you like to elaborate on this, H. Faisal? It would be helpful.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, I mean, I was just, I guess, just elaborating on what I understood from what's being said by Birkanab bin Abdul Rahman. In that, I mean, like, in wanting to utilize the universe, wanting to get the best car, for example, or eat healthy, or I don't know, whatever it is that you want to do, itself is not, quote unquote, unwise, but rather, if I try to seek that for just attaining that thing itself, as in then I get caught up in the causes, or I get caught up in what that thing looking to itself, then that becomes unwise for me. Otherwise, to say, don't try to do well at school, or intentionally go out of your way to, drive a car that causes you problems. I don't know. Like that would be against my createdness. So it's already within me that I'm going to act in this particular way, but to act in that way without questioning what the purpose of that feeling is in me, or what that looks to, what am I going to utilize this wanting to seek wisdom or constant self-improvement for, then that becomes, I think, the crux of the issue here. Otherwise, I just, I entertain myself, but I think even in that entertainment, it's not only unwise, but there's a suffering. So it's not really, I wouldn't be able to call it entertaining for myself, but perhaps just distractions at best.
Yeah. Thank you for your comment, brothers.
The target of this wise philosopher is to reach moon. So, and moon is a manifestation of the light in the moon is a manifestation of sun, but apparently the wise philosopher is not aware of that. Like going with this theory, because once he reaches the moon, he realizes that this is not what he was looking for. Then the despair kicks in. So if we, considering that we are like the fourth person now in this story. We are observing all three of them. So we see that we know that there is sun. So actually what they are targeting is one of the manifestations of sun, but they are not aware of that. The droplet is not aware of that. So this reminds me of seeking wisdom for the sake of wisdom. Because it's not a manifestation of all wise. The thing that is being sought is wisdom here. And the philosopher in here is a wise person. So wisdom is something good, you like it, it's something to be liked in and of itself. So this is why this mindset wants to seek wisdom just for the sake of wisdom. And I can relate with it, for example. I enjoy reading philosophical texts. What is the purpose? It's just, if you like, cool, or it's also just expands my brain. I feel like it's just getting bigger or expanding, whatever. It has some sort of apparently merit in and of itself. The author says, once you reach there, once you reach what your goal was, whatever is your mood, what you would consider as the destination, you will realize that it's not satisfying you. It doesn't have light in and of itself. Because I thought that if I understand this thought, let's say, whatever, and I experienced this a lot within my own journey, that's how I say, once I grasp this understanding, I'm going to be enlightened, perfectly satisfied. But as I take it exclusively for the sake of wisdom, it becomes really dry, like the surface of the moon, it's dark. And the darkness of despair is something interesting here. So it gives me despair because I came to the destination which I was expecting to be enlightening, and I find it to be just tasteless and dry and dark. This gives me despair. What else am I supposed to do? Where else am I expected to find the light? So this really gives me despair, because I have been chasing to understand this for so long. Now that I am here, nothing satisfactory in here, which even might give me some feeling like, if this is not truth, then what is truth? So this sort of thing starts kicking in. Or desolation of loneliness. Something that this reminds me of is, this might be very specific though, but as I keep exclusively going with intellect and wisdom for the sake of wisdom, conscious beings disappears in my life. This might be a specific case, but personally this is how I'm feeling about it. Because I am evaluating things as maybe it's only my understanding, only my perception. Nothing else is out there in the existence other than my perception. So all the conscious beings disappear, as if I get trapped within my mind. I existentially become lonely. The only conscious being is me, because I cannot talk about any other consciousness anyway. So I can entrap myself in this sort of a, since I was trying to go with exclusively intellectual and doing it just for the sake of wisdom itself.
How does that get rid of conscious beings?
So if I take it to the extreme that I am the recipient, everything is my perception. I don't really know if anything else exists. I cannot make any judgment about them anyways. The only thing I know is I sense something. Maybe it's just an imagination in my mind. Maybe it's something that I just come up with, or things are being projected onto my perception. So consciousness disappears, only me. There's only me and my consciousness that I am sure about, but nothing beyond that. So it is sort of giving me a different way of loneliness. Or if you would like to take it from another perspective, since he says that you are going in terms of, so you got stuck in causality, I'm not able to find where the existence is sourced from. Because this is how he says you end up being lonely. You are, existentially, you get stuck. So I become lonely. Although I arrive at the moon, I might be wise relative to other people. I find some sort of answers. But my answers are not saving me from my loneliness, because where did I come from? Where am I going to? I am pretty much stuck in the moment that I'm living. I don't know what we can understand from pestering of evil spirits that he is mentioning in there. The horrors of that beliefness. But at least partially, I can sense that I'm experiencing such things when I do it for using my own light, because this is how he started it. He said, you have advanced as far as the moon with the telescope of your droplet of thought. I have a droplet of thought, and I'm trying to raise and find light with my droplet of thought and with the stairs of philosophy. Somebody else also put something on top of each other. I have my thought and somebody else's thought. I combine them and I'm trying to reach the moon. But the target of this journey is not the sun. This person is trying to reach the moon.
I think everything that you said so far makes sense, except
Let's repeat the except part.
except I don't think that, like, at least from the text itself, right? It doesn't seem to me as though the philosopher is aiming to get to the moon. It just seems like he finds himself at the moon. It says, you have advanced as far as the moon, with the telescope of your droplet of thought, you have entered the moon. I mean, it doesn't seem explicit that the moon is its aim, rather that it's in search of light, and it arrives through the specific staircase that it's building through philosophy at the moon. So
initially he was saying enamored with the moon. So the guy is obsessed with or in love with.
right, okay, all right, let me grant that as well. But nevertheless, I would say that, like, no one searches for a dead rock. You know, he might, or I might be enamored with the moon because I do think it's the sun in a sense. Like, I see it as the sun, which is why I'm enamored with it, which is why I want to reach it. I don't want to reach it because it's like the subsidiary of the actual light. So I guess why I'm saying is that yeah, of course, I mean, there's talking with it specifically within the context of philosophy, there's a lot of it that, you know, including myself and others, I see a lot more. You know, it's sometimes just kind of like the fun of problem solving, or kind of like a puzzle, you want to solve it. You know, there's the fun in and of itself aspect of it, but I don't think anyone, like, I think people pursue things that they pursue because they do think that it's going to lead them to the absolute sun. You know, there's that expectation of it. It's just that in this specific case, it doesn't lead you to the sun. It's kind of this misguided path, perhaps. So, and maybe that's not contrary to what you were saying, and everything else that you said made sense to me. But just as another, and just as like another question that I've been having with this paragraph is, it's a very provoking paragraph, I think. And so, you know, like Nursi here is saying, okay, you've entered the moon, dense, it's dark, has neither light nor light. And then it says, you can escape from this condition that you find yourself in if you accept if you follow these conditions. And then it's like condition 1, condition 2, condition 3. 3 conditions. Or maybe 2 conditions. Yeah, like 2 conditions. And after this, fulfilling these conditions, you will find your perfection. Like, with all due respect, it makes me kind of say, like, all right, thank you, Captain Obvious. Like, it's not just, how do you transition from being in this particular state that you're going to just accept these conditions and find perfection? Like, how does that pathway work? You know, it's like if they could have, if someone in that situation is able to accept those conditions, they wouldn't have been in that situation to begin with, in a sense. And I would say that maybe it's because of the necessity of arriving at the moon and seeing that it has no light that you are even able to come to those conditions. Like, how do you come to those conditions without even experiencing the desolation of the moon? I don't know.
Yeah, the comment. I guess that it's a process, right? It's not just, oh, you just take off a pair of glasses and then, oh, you can see the moon. It was right in front of you. It's like a transitional process, right? You say, you know, what is that process? So I've been reading the droplet as he's been relying on his intellect, his knowledge, you know, what he can reason, how he can reason his way to guidance. And that guidance is the moon, because he's unable to see the sun. Because there's something fundamental about relying on cause and effect, causal relationships that leads you to guidance, whatever. And so it's somehow, yeah, as you say, transitioning. How to give up on relying on causal effects. And as you say, it's the wise thing to do, right? These things, you know, you have to support yourself. You have to please your boss, turn in assignments, do things like that. It's logical. But how do you, is the answer not that? The answer not that. And where is it coming from? Oh, I lost myself.
Thank you for that. Yeah, a lot of questions.
I think I'm trying to understand what he means by saying turn to the sun of reality. The first condition, for example. Because initially he said this person takes, so with a telescope of his droplet of thought. As an alternative, he says you should turn yourself to the sun of truth, sun of reality. I think this is an important point. Am I expecting guidance to come to me? Or am I going to find guidance with my own effort exclusively? Because my understanding is when he says turn to son of reality, my understanding is his meaning, one meaning is revelation. Because the person in here is saying that, no, I will rely on my thought and the thought of others, like the philosophy. And the philosophy is all starting from Earth and trying to explain things within the Earth. I make the decision right there. I will try to solve the riddle of this existence. I'm trying to understand what's going on in here. But I have an initial constraint. I say that I will use my intellect and I will benefit from thoughts of those who use their intellect. And it takes me to the pinnacle of wisdom on earth. I might become the best of philosophers, combine all the knowledge from among the philosophers. But still I am within this realm of earth, the knowledge does not take me anywhere. This is why I am finding out that the thing that I consider to be light is just dark in itself. From far, it sounded like I would find light and wisdom once I reached the moon. But when I came near it, I realized that no light in here. So what needs to change, that's why author is saying that so you made the mistake initially, as if you constrained yourself to take your intellect only. This doesn't mean that the others are not going to use their intellect, but the constraint that is being put in here is I will use my thought only, my intellect only, and the intellect of others, the thought of others. And that much I'm able to come down. And I might be doing the same, although just a question. Can I, for example, benefit from Nursi's writings as if it's like another philosophy text? And I'm not saying this for, let's say, a philosophy major or a professor in some philosophy department. Yeah, maybe they might be taking this as a philosophy text. But like, as one of you in this discussion, am I taking the Nursi's explanation? Apparently, he is claiming that he is benefiting from this scripture. But is it possible that I am reading his writings as some knowledge, like philosophical knowledge for myself? So much so that at some point there I am expecting to reach the light source. I will realize that it was dark.
Is this like form of knowledge information? Like information that doesn't profit you? Is this the type of knowledge we're talking about?
Like, apparently it is not benefiting me because of my initial wrong assumptions. I couldn't get out of the causality. I am still forming my ideas within this realm. So eventually it's not benefiting me because it's not solving my core problems of loneliness, and it puts me into despair. As I said, I couldn't go any further beyond these two, but I can sense these two in my life, feeling despair as I'm not able to figure out, or even if I crack some problems, it doesn't give me any light. I say, so what? What's going to happen next? I understand. Okay, causes have no effect. I understand that. Maybe. Even for the problem of causality. Even if I convince myself about this, do I find the light in it, or is it just becoming some sort of information for me which doesn't help me?
Like, I raise my hand to stand in or like in line.
Okay, then I'll make a quick comment. Like this idea of knowledge, like you think that once something clicks, or once you finally learn something, or let's say in the discussion, you have like an epiphany, you're like, oh, after this, or during like a daily activity, you have an epiphany, you're like, after this thought, everything will be beautiful, everything will be full of light, I'm never going to fall into darkness again. I finally understood this. Like I reached nirvana, let's say. And then 10 minutes later, that goes away, and you're like, this thing that I thought was so beautiful actually doesn't change much about my life. You thought that knowledge was going to save you, but then you find that actually it doesn't save you. And also I used to have like similar thoughts, or maybe even now I have similar thoughts when I read Nursi. I'm like, man, if only I understood what this guy was saying, I would be flying. I'd be like living the life. Or just like very complex comparison he's making. Now, like, if I actually understood what he was saying, then I probably would have like solved the riddle of life, and everything would be simple and easy for me. Like I am giving that knowledge an inherent like value. Like, once I understand that, then things will be solved. That's what you said reminds me of.
As far as I know, life was not easy for him.
Yeah. So it didn't solve him, right?
Even like his last moments, like he was trying to reach somewhere in the car, right? He was always a burden, let's say.
He was always in need.
So I also think that I guess here, the author is not necessarily only talking about being wise for the sake of, some information or for the sake of wisdom. So this can be part of it, but I guess he's talking about the people who are sincere, like saints, for instance. They are sincere. They think what they do is wise, and what they do is indeed wise. Within the order of causes, they do the thing which makes best sense. At least the people around me, they really trying to do the best thing they know. They're not just, okay, let's read one more page of Wikipedia because it will make me feel better. Or in our case, since it's philosophy, let's read one page of Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy because it will make me feel better. I don't think he's talking about these people. He's talking about the people who are sincere to find what they need. And it's interesting, like when he talks about the limits or when he talks about the mistakes, let's say, he doesn't say that, but what you do doesn't sum up. What you do doesn't make sense. He doesn't say that. He says what you do will take you to loneliness or despair. It will take you darkness. It will take you fear. Not that what you do doesn't make sense. What you do doesn't, whatever, end up summing to one. No, it does. But it will take you loneliness. But it will take you darkness. So for instance, if I'm realizing that I'm in need of sustenance, right? What is the best thing you do? Within the order of causes, you have to find a job which pays good. Is there any other way? No. Unless, you have some inheritance, unless you, play lottery and become lucky. You have to find a job which pays well. Nobody can tell me that this is not wise. Or nobody can tell me, can you do it for the sake of, just entertaining your intellect. No. I'm doing it because I need sustenance. And this is the order of causes that I live in. Right? But author says, let me find it. Give up the night of nature and turn to sun of reality. So what you live in, what you think you are living, is dark. It's a night. It's order of causes. But there is a reality beyond that, which is light, which is warm. If you find this, then you will realize whatever makes sense in this order of causes is not the right thing for you. So in our example, the sustenance example, he says, don't you see that whatever you get so far, it's not from causes, not because you have job. Everything was given to you. If you are trying to attribute things to the job, you didn't find this job, right? Job found you. If you are talking about the good paying salary, whatever, the job, for some strange reasons, your salary is higher than the other workers. So whatever when you try to attribute these things to causes, you will fail because this is not the reality. There is someone trying to give you sustenance through some means, but this is not the way of getting sustenance, that finding a good paying job. Your reality is, even if you sit there, your sustenance will come to you. This is your reality. Your reality is sun, the daytime, not the nighttime. So get out of it. So what Yusuf said is important, is the revelation. So in the order of causes, we say, if I earn more, if I save more, if I give it to myself more, I will have more sustenance, right? Does it make sense? It does. But Revelation says, forget about it. If you give more to others, you will have more sustenance. Where's the wisdom there? If I have $10 in my pocket, I will give 5 of it to homeless, and I will get more sustenance. But it happens. Somehow it happens. I gave $5 to someone, I found $15 somewhere else. I don't know how, but it happens. Or I don't find $15, but somehow my needs are eliminated. So with $5, now I can enjoy more. Or this doesn't happen, something else happens. I don't know how, but it does. And it gives me joy. It gives me warmth. It gives me light. And Revelation tells me this is what you are looking for. You are looking for light. You are looking for warmth. And I'm the only one who can give it to you. If you plunge in the causes, and if you try to make sense of it, you can. I give you the faculty. Use your wisdom. You will try to do the best, but it will take you the loneliness. You will save your money, but no matter how much you save, it will not sustain your needs.
So it would be wise to save money so that you have more sustenance. But then Revelation says...
If you are plunged in the order of causes, I don't know at least any other way to...
It doesn't make sense to ever give charity, or give away money.
You can, that might be, again, in the order of causes, that might be a wisdom of giving charity, because otherwise poor will attack you.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise there will be imbalance. And this imbalance eventually will harm the economy, which will harm your salary. That might be a wisdom as well, giving the charity, but it will not help you. It will not give you the light.
Yeah. So in some ways, are we saying that Revelation takes us to doing things which, if you're plunged in causes and trying to act like be the perfect within the causes, like Revelation actually tells you things that are not like that. Like it tells you to do to give away money instead of trying to keep money, or to help people instead of just like focusing on yourself, maybe. Or it tells you things that inherently wouldn't make sense within the order of things if you're trying to live perfectly according to the order. But then I would also say the order of things has to take into account your emotions and like your feelings. And I would say that within the order of things, you have a feeling to also want other people's happiness. So you would want to still give away money.
I think by playing this feeling card, we cannot go much. We cannot reach the sun. The problem is not, we're not talking about feelings. We're not talking about my emotions. You can also fit all your feelings and emotions in the order of causes as well. This is what we do. Like at least my department, we're studying feelings of people. There are certain people that I work with, they somehow study people's emotions. So it's not about feelings, emotions versus something else. It's about whether you get your warmth, your light as a human or not. Whether you are lonely or not.
So the issues we're trying to solve are loneliness, darkness of despair, and fear, like being pestered by evil spirits. These are the issues we're trying to solve. And plunging in causes doesn't do that.
These are the things that will tell us that you are on the moon. These are not the things that we are trying to solve. These are things that will tell you, oh, Birkan, you are on the moon. This is not sun. don't you see the darkness? Don't you see the loneliness? In this case, loneliness is your guidance, your messenger. It will tell you that you are in the wrong place. It's wrong.
Why do you think that he didn't talk about the suffering in the flower, as you mentioned? That he mentions it now for the droplet. You don't know? There's a limit.
And there's also, may I?
Sure.
So there's also the second aspect. The second condition was, you believe with complete certainty that the light of this night are the shadows of the lights of the daytime sun. This was the second condition. So there was some light that this traveler was benefiting from moon. So is it like, are we going to deny that light now? Or says, be cognizant that, realize that the light that you are receiving is coming from the sun. So the wisdom that you come across is coming from revelation, related to the all-wise one, not get stuck in wisdom per se. Wisdom becomes wisdom, or wisdom becomes enlightening once it is coming from all-wise. Because if it's not connected to all-wise, wisdom itself is a causal thing. Because if it is not coming from an absolute source, if it's something from within existence, then the wisdom itself is part of the causal chain. So this is why it is dark in itself, because it's not going beyond death, beyond time, beyond anything. Like yourself, it gets stuck in this existence, and the existence is fleeting away. So you initially thought that moon was enlightening. Once you arrived to moon, you found out that it's not light. Now it's a contradiction, right? I thought that as I reach wisdom, as I seek for finding answers to my questions, I would get enlightened. But as much as I learned, I found myself in more darkness. So such a contradiction. Like, well, this is why some people would say, if only I would, or as they say, ignorance is bliss. Or if only I was like illiterate, like that woman on top of a mountain, rather than reading all these things. Or like, because as much as I get stuck in this existence, including the wisdom itself, if I do not see the wisdom as coming from all-wise one, then the wisdom itself becomes a dark object itself, like moon. But if it is telling me about all-wise one, then it's opening up horizons for me. Now I'm not constrained in this existence anymore. Because now I can sense that life is not fleeting, then eternity opens up to me. Otherwise, it never happens. With my wisdom, I get stuck in here. Wisdom itself becomes darkness. And I guess when we were studying 17th, where Nursi was talking about something in a poem. So light itself became darkness. He was using some sentence like this. So he talks about his transition from old Said to new Said. When he is in Yuşa Tepesi in Istanbul, he talks about two levha, like two facets. One face looks to his old Said, old self, which talks about the wisdom and knowledge with which he is trying to find truth. And he says, as I get into this, light became darkness for me. Then he talks about the other facet, and he says, then the darkness disappeared and light started appearing. So it is this sort of a conversation that happens within himself. So I guess this is what it is. Like, just to summarize, I will repeat the same thing again. But as I feel like I will solve those problems by wisdom, and wisdom not coming from all-wise one. Like the wisdom that I am seeking, if it doesn't connect me, if it doesn't lead to the all-wise one, then the wisdom itself becomes darkness for me. Because if I cannot reach the all-wise, it doesn't solve my problems. So then it looks like what's happening is maybe sometimes I am living in a world in which, although I am within contradictions, I'm not really feeling that contradiction. What I mean by that is, maybe I am proving the existence of God, but still I am, at the same time, while I am intellectually somehow proving that there must exist a creator, whatever, I feel like sometimes I am still taking wisdom to exist in and of itself. Or still I am able to say I am wise, for example, which is now contradicting my conclusion. My conclusion was there must exist an all-wise one. Yet, I am saying, how do you know this? If you ask me, I would say, well, I went through those steps and I arrived to this conclusion. And when I say I truly mean I, as an existing entity in and of itself, which is a contradiction with my conclusion. So this is what I personally live. This is part of my life, I guess. So this is why exclusively I'm not able to get into one of those categories. And although I might be saying that I am, I conclude that an absolute source exists, this might be an intellectual conclusion on my side, but still I might be feeling like, but also independently I exist. So this sort of self-contradictions also put me into darkness. And I'm finding this in my own line of thought, when I listen to somebody's line of thought. There are a lot of contradictions that we are in. So it's not that much black and white in our personal lives, I would say.
So in the second condition, he says, "We believe with complete certainty that the light of this night are the shadows of the lights of the daytime sun." I would say this is something we try to do, but the issue with how we're trying to do this, though, is because it's more like a conclusion through long steps rather than, or it's a conclusion through long steps of thought, and it's not, like, I'm not living with it, like, practically. It's more like I came to this conclusion, this is true. However, you're not actually witnessing that continuously, like as if everything is being created.
It might be that, now that I'm questioning myself, because I am truly benefiting when some of my conclusions gets connected to Revelation. For example, I read Revelation and I see that some thought that somehow I arrived at some point through help of somebody, whatever. When I read it from Revelation, this is a feeling, I am feeling like I am getting lighter. What I mean by lighter is, initially I thought I managed to crack this problem, and now I proved this and that it is. It's mine. As if like, this is how it is when you write a paper, when you prove a theorem. You're proud of your product. I proved this, I published this in such and such journal. It's something to be proud of. And it's a burden in reality. Especially if this is something about, let's say you prove to yourself God exists. It becomes your best journal publication, let's say. Something to be proud of? Shouldn't be, right? But the ego is as such that it's something to be being proud of. This is how I feel about it. But as I feel proud of it, it becomes a burden over my shoulders. But once I read it from Revelation, the same thing, maybe years later, and I realized that Revelation was talking about the same thing, and even more clearly, like without all the hassles that I went through, just putting things into places very accurately. Then I realized nothing to be really discovered from scratch. So then I see that what I found was already available, and much more of it is available in front of me. Now I throw away all my, or at least I can throw away all my those proud and say that now I am your student. I want to benefit it from you. Now I am connecting because the wisdom that I found to be the most dearest, I found it to be like 2 plus 2 equals 4 at the ease of that much of a thing when it comes to the revelation. Revelation says, are you proud of this meaning? Here it is. I just put it in here. As much as I see it from the revelation as such, then in my practical life, this is a very practical part of it, then I see that all the things that I was being proud of was just very childish. And now this reflection light that I was experiencing was coming from revelation itself. Now that I found the true source, I can now just dive into the light of it. And the way I feel about it is really taking my burdens away from me. Because otherwise, I am truly feeling lonely in the sense that, look at the society, all of them are just blindly going like living like animals, but somehow with all the hardness and everything, I proved that God exists. I proved that with all several years of thought, causes have no effect. These things shouldn't be something to be proud of, right? Practically it does. So but once I see it in the revelation, it is saving me from, the second aspect in here, realizing with the certainty that the light of this night are the shadows of the lights of the daytime sun. But the wisdom is coming from the all-wise one. Then it just this revelation itself, this truth being revealed to you saves you from darkness.
But don't you still have to go through that long process of like confirming the revelation?
You do, but now you know where it is coming from. In order to compare this, you just try to experience, or if you have experienced in your life, go back to those days without the guidance of revelation. Just even if this much of truth, to arrive to this much of truth is so much painful. And this is why when you arrive at it, it's so valuable for you. And you become proud of it because you say, okay, I dig this and I found it. And if you want someone who cannot really make sense of it and he's just blindly believing or anything, I will mock him. I will feel like I am superior than him. These are the things that are happening in the darkness of nature in practice. And if I do not mock him explicitly out of I'm a good man sort of a thing, from deep inside, like these are the feelings that are just going in there. Good to know.
You reminded me of something about a story about in the time of the Greeks. There's that one guy, Pythagoras, who created the Pythagorean theorem. So when he discovered that, he claimed to be like a prophet or something. He claimed to be, speak to God or receive revelations and something. Just went around with followers and they basically treated him like a god on earth. And that's just, something we learn in like 6th grade math class, a squared plus b squared is c squared.
But if you take it from that perspective, you learn the entire Quran also when you are in the 1st grade.
Oh, no, not the whole thing.
There are people who memorize it even before going to school.
That's true, yeah.
So if you take it that way, like you could say that, this our prophet who claims to be prophet for something, we learn.
Yeah.
Maybe he was sincere, maybe he received it from God.
He could have, but it's just how, again, like the value they put on that, because they didn't have the regulations, that was, in comparison to what knowledge they had, that was like, substantial, and now we take for granted even more weight.
Before you, I have a question, because I think we're in agreement that we're probably in this moon stage, or we see that we're suffering from loneliness or darkness of despair, being or fear. We're somewhere around this stage, or maybe it's always fluctuating, but we're concluding that God exists. We're trying to like learn and study and learn about this. And I think that in our conclusions, we are coming to such things as saying like, that all the light that we see are the shadows of the sun. Like it's all coming from the sun actually. And we are trying to follow revelation. Are we not in our discussions and our studying? Like, are we, if the issue or the solution is to follow revelation and to attribute everything to revelation, then is our issue that we're not doing that? Is this where our fault is?
And I will truly talk from myself. I don't know we part of it, but for quite a long time, for instance, I exclusively took Nursi's writings intellectually, like trying to see the aspect of revelation in it required some extra effort for me, to the extent that I was like, Nursi starts each of his chapters with a few verses, and I was reading the verses, and I was saying that, well, this guy is genius. He thought all these things, but then he came up with a few verses from Quran which are related to that, just put them into the beginning. And truly, this is how I read it for quite a long time. But for instance, nowadays we are studying 11th verse, right? For the first time in my life nowadays, I am realizing that it's an interpretation of Surah Shams in deep detail. Before, I thought that Nursi is having some sort of a model in his mind in terms of how the existence is, what does prophethood fit, how does it fit into...
Just a really smart guy.
Yeah, he's a really smart guy. He really thought a lot. And then this chapter in Quran is related to that. And so I was just making a reverse engineering, sort of, which didn't make any sense. So in this sense, in my own understanding, I was just praising the genius of Nursi and just trying to build up my own genius like his genius. But this is why I was getting stuck within the nature. But if I take it the other way around, this man truly needed guidance, as he's describing in the 11th verse, right? Every human is in need of guidance. He found guidance from the revelation, and he is sharing his understanding of the revelation with me. So he already connected his understanding to the All-Wise One. In my perception of this message as well, I should be connecting it to the All-Wise One so that it becomes an illuminating wisdom. Otherwise, it's becoming I'm trying to build up my own genius, my own understanding. Again, it is my own understanding, my own genius. This is why it's becoming dark. But if I say that I am being instructed from the All-Wise One, the wisdom that is occurring in me is manifestation of an All-Wise One, then it is becoming enlightening, because now it becomes absolute, like infinite, unlimited, eternal. It saves me from loneliness. It saves me from despair, because it's not from me. But if it is my own genius, then I am truly starting to feel the aging in my thinking as well. Like, not as sharp as I used to be. So it's something to be in despair. I'm not able to reason as once I used to be reasoning like. But if I take it the other way around, no, the wisdom, the knowledge, the light is being given to me. Then whatever is being given to me, I'm going to be content with it. And I know that the source is absolute. So I'm getting attached to this aspect of it now.
So instead of like building up a stair to the moon, you're actually just maybe sitting in the light of the sun.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm getting sharper and sharper as I get older. That's interesting. So don't we still need to confirm, don't we still need to go through this long process? That was your question. So I think this part is talking about not a philosopher as a professional, but a philosopher in me, philosopher in you, who thinks that we have to take this long journey, long process to confirm something. Who thinks when you feed your baby with milk in a plastic bottle, and when your child gets fed or bigger and bigger every day, this philosopher thinks that I have to take the bottle of the milk, I have to study its properties, I have to check whether these properties match with whatever he observed, and then make some calculations, make some arguments, and then say that, oh, that cannot be the case, that must be God. Do we have to do this? Like, if this is the case, then I guess the religion is only for people who can make really sound arguments, which I cannot make most of the time. So then the religion or the wisdom is not for me. But some people somehow, they just, yes, there is a confirmation, like I'm not saying that you cannot confirm, but what we understand from this confirmation is what a philosopher would understand. Because for an atom-like person or atom-like moment of yours, because you just look at the bottle and say, this cannot be, feeling the baby, this is just the plastic bottle. And before that, for out of nowhere, somehow the milk come out of my breast. I don't need to study breast or anything like to know that. It's my breast. I know from first time, like milk was not there before. Somebody is somehow feeding her. At the very beginning, she needed 1 millimeter. Milk was exactly 1 millimeter. Then she needed 10 millimeter. And somehow milk became 10 millimeter. Like, you don't even have to, know how to count. You just look. It was one droplet, and then one handful. As she gets bigger and bigger, milk gets more and more. Everyone can see it. You don't need to go, the long processes. But if you are a philosopher at this moment, you have to make sense of it in a way that, oh, these milk secreting cells of my breast, or whatever your profession, you have to talk about them, because this is what makes sense to you. You have to go through all these long processes. Otherwise, you just know yourself. You just know your baby. You say, I'm not feeding. When I'm out of milk, I won't be in despair. Because just like he gave me milk, he will give something. I don't know what. I didn't know milk. When it goes out, he will give me something else. I don't need to know.
Could we say that our impotence and our neediness, these are things that they don't require long thought processes. It's just true. It's just apparent. The fact that you're impotent, the fact that you're needy, the fact that...
And the fact that you sustain.
That you're sustained. These are just apparent, actually.
They're just apparent, yeah. But when you are in the darkness of nature, they become shadow-like lights. So your sustenance is still there. You still know that your baby is fed, but there are all these long processes to feed her. It's just like a shadow, like sustenance is there, but it's not enough to give you warmth. Because once you finish this bottle, you know that you have to prepare the second one. Even when you are feeding, you know that you have to prepare the second one. You already making the calculations, like, oh, should I make warm the water and then put, how much the formula I will add. You're still making the calculation while feeling, already making the calculations. They're just shadow. Like you say, yes, alhamdulillah, I'm feeling the baby, but what about the next bottle? But when you say that somebody is feeding my baby out of nowhere, out of a plastic bottle, such a funny thing, plastic bottle. You're sucking the plastic and you get fed. Somebody's doing this. Then it becomes your sun. Like a small shadow like light becomes your sun. Somebody is feeding my baby.
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم الحمد لله رب العالمين الفاتحة